Welcome back to another PROUT Rev episode. I am going to talk about now the status of capitalism, the conditions of capitalism, and ask a basic question. Does capitalism need to be rescued yet again? Remember back in 2008 when the banks and the corporations were failing and the government gave them money in order to continue. So if these companies represented capitalism, what the government essentially did was rescue them. So we're in the same situation now with the coronavirus. And this last stimulus package that the government is promoting, billions and trillions of dollars are going to corporations. And so the question is, should we be rescuing these companies? And I want to introduce you now to Dada Veda, who's one of our regular commentators here. He's an author, a musician, a proud activist. Let's just get right to it. How does capitalism fare during a pandemic like we're facing right now?
Well, it's faring very poorly right now because if you follow the latest economic statistics, we have joblessness. We're approaching the whole level of the 1930s, which is really, it's depression era statistics, and this is a very poor indication about capitalism. So we just bailed out these companies. It's less than 10 years, and now they're back with their hands out again for another handout. And these are the same people who were the proponents of rugged individualism, and now they've come to the government for the handout. So we have to question now what kind of rescue there should be. And I feel there should be a rescue of the people first. The people who have lost their jobs, the people who have to pay their rent and their mortgages. And I think these people have to be rescued, and the companies have to be treated in a different way than we did in 2008.
Do you think the government should socialize these industries?
Okay, this is a very interesting point. The question comes, I mean, not just people from PROUT, but other people, progressives or on the left, or people who are looking for different kind of solutions have said, that now that the especially like the airline industry is coming again, they're coming for their handout, their bailout. The last time, when some of these industries were bailed out, they just bought back their stock. They got money and they bought back stock, and they did kind of financial shenanigans. This time there should be more government oversight of any company that's getting their bailouts. Like some people have proposed, put workers on the boards and things like that, more, or government will have more control over their operations. So this is one thing. But, in PROUT, one of the blueprints that we're giving for the society is that important industries which affect the whole economy, which key industries, I also call it the public sector, these should come under public management. So maybe it's time for some of these failing industries to come under public management. Like, for instance, the airline industry, there are many countries have a flagship air carriers, and some countries have even whole rail systems which are under public management, and they're doing very well. So we have to think about some of these industries, and maybe it's time for some of these industries to come under public management.
If PROUT were enacted today, what should be on the top of the list to change?
Actually, for me, I would say the easy, because we have a structure that we would like to see. We would like to see private enterprise working in a very small way, where people who have family enterprises or enterprises with very few employees dealing with non-essential things. This is the scope of free enterprise, and it should thrive, no problem. And the most of the industries we should have, and business concerns, they should be in a cooperative setting. It means that the people who work there are the owners, and they elect the managers. And so we want a big, thriving cooperative sector. And then the third part of it is that the industries and the areas of economic activity which affect the whole society and even the planet, these should come under public management. So when you look at that thing, it's going to be difficult to, if I had to do, you can't raise a magic wand and then change all the businesses into cooperatives. But one area where I feel that is ripe for this kind of blueprint is in the public sector, the key industries. A lot of these things were in the past, they were public utilities. Like, for instance, education is a public sector, but people want to privatize it. So there's been a rush for privatization in areas which really are the public concern. So the first thing is to roll back privatization, strengthen the public schools. That's why this idea to have free public education, even up to college level, these things should be promoted. And a very interesting case is that the U.S. Postal Service, which is going to need a bailout, and they won't give a bailout to it. They're giving a bailout to the cruise ship industries, but not the public, the mail system, the postal system. So this should be strengthened. And in fact, there was a very interesting article. You can read it in Jacobin magazine. I believe it's a socialist magazine. It's also online. And they have a thing about the United States Postal Service. And they said this should really be strengthened with a postal bank and other things like that. And in that article, they also talk about another thing, which I'm very keen on, which is the public ownership of the internet, like public broadband, and make it more universal. So I think really that we should look at these key industries and public utilities and roll back privatization in these areas. And I think this would be one of the biggest steps that we can take towards a better economy.
Yeah, in El Salvador, the president, he basically said 3 months, rent is suspended, loan payments are suspended, utility costs would be suspended, and also internet costs. So essentially providing free internet to the people. And in PROUT, we talk about maximizing the amenities. So whereas at one point maybe the internet was not a basic necessity, but now it's so widespread and so readily available that it might as well be something that is guaranteed to all. And in many ways, it is like a basic necessity. What would we do during this quarantine without the internet?
I mean, really, the internet is a utility. It's a public utility. But the problem is it's privatized. It's owned by, there's Comcast and AT&T and all these other, it's privatized. So it should be put under public control. And there are places where they have municipal broadband, and this whole area should be taken out of the private hands. So it's a big step, but it's a doable thing. If I had to do over all the enterprises and make them cooperative, that's going to take time, to do that. But some of these things, like to promote public transport, public communications, these are possible. These are possible. I think that society should move in that area. And speaking about what you said about El Salvador, about rent, and so other countries too have done that, where, because in this country we said that, it's that people are on their own, but other countries have stepped in and said that no, you won't lose your job and your pay is guaranteed. And this country here in the U.S., we're sending checks of $1,200. Then the people have to file for unemployment and go to food banks to pick up their food. This is not the way to do it. So this is a big test of are we going to go this route of rugged individualism, or are we going to think in a more public way of handling out and rescue? So we should rescue the people and not the companies. I feel this should be our approach.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dada. We'll see you soon here on PROUT Rev.
Okay, thanks for having me.
So I think now we want to just get real and say that we don't need to rescue these companies like we did in the past, without any strings attached, without having a stake in their profits, or without socializing them. Like Dada said, people should be bailed out. The people should be rescued. Yes, of course, if these companies go under, people will lose their jobs. If banks go under, people will lose their savings accounts and things like that. But they can still remain, but now under the operation of the government, and now for, as a nonprofit thing. We don't need to keep rescuing these companies. We have to help the people. We have to reorganize those companies so that they are beneficial to all. Stay tuned for our Proud in Practice session, where we're going to be talking about the family, how the family is right now the best example of where PROUT is currently enacted. So stay tuned for that.